They applauded your compassion and then used it to climb over you. They praised your honesty and then used your truth to set a trap. You gave them your loyalty and they handed you betrayal. Why is the virtuous man always the first to fall? The answer is not in philosophy, but in power. The chains you feel were not forged by your enemies, but by your own good intentions. You exist within a prison. It has no iron bars, no stone walls, no armed guards at its perimeter. And yet, it is the most effective prison ever conceived, for its architect, warden, and sole inmate is you. Its walls are built from the desperate need for approval. Its locks are forged from the fear of judgment. Its warden is the silent, perpetual question that echoes in your mind before every action, every word, every thought. What will they think of me? You believe you are pursuing happiness, a noble and worthy goal. But what you call happiness is merely a temporary parole, granted by the whims of others. It is a fragile state, a fleeting warmth dependent entirely on external validation, on the applause of the crowd in the digital coliseum, on the approving nod from a superior, on the fickle affection of a friend. This peace you seek is not your own, it is on loan, and the interest rate is your autonomy. You live your life as a reflection in 1,000 different mirrors, contorting your image to please each one, losing your true form in the process. You are a servant to the opinions of a world that is, at its core, utterly indifferent to your well-being. This is the condition of the psychologically vulnerable. They are the chained men and women of history who believe that goodness is a shield, when in reality, for the unprepared, it is a target. They mistake the rules of the nursery for the laws of the jungle. They believe that if they are kind, the world will be kind in return. This is the foundational error, the fatal miscalculation that leads to ruin. The world is not a benevolent institution. It is an arena of competing wills, a theater of ambition where masks are more common than faces. To navigate it with a map drawn by idealists is to march willingly into an ambush. This is where the path to invincibility begins. It starts not with the acquisition of a new strength, but with the destruction of a fatal weakness. And the guide for this perilous journey is not a saint, but a realist. Niccolo Machiavelli offers no comforting lies. He is not a philosopher for the hopeful, but a physician for the ambitious. He does not offer a map to heaven. He provides a blueprint of the world as it is, a cold and unflinching anatomy of power. His first lesson is a call to rebellion, an insurrection of the self against the tyranny of outside opinion. The awakening of the sovereign mind does not happen in a flash of light. It happens in the dark, in the quiet realization that the moral code you so dutifully follow was not written for your benefit. Conventional morality, the virtues of meekness, unconditional honesty, and turning the other cheek, is a brilliant instrument of social control. It is a set of rules designed by the shepherds to keep the sheep in the pen, to make them predictable, manageable, and ultimately ready for shearing. The wolf, however, is not bound by the morality of the sheep. To achieve psychological invincibility, you must stop thinking like prey. You must begin to understand the world from the perspective of the predator, not to become one blindly, but to recognize the forces at play. You must understand that true power, the kind that endures, does not seek the fleeting warmth of being liked. It seeks the cold, hard permanence of being effective. It trades the fragility of happiness for the resilience of purpose. This awakening brings us to the first and most crucial principle of psychological invincibility. It is the cornerstone upon which your inner fortress, your unbreachable state, will be built. The first principle: forge your own moral law. This is a radical and often terrifying declaration of mental independence. It does not mean you descend into chaos, cruelty, and depravity. That is the caricature of Machiavelli, painted by those he sought to expose. It means you cease to outsource your judgment. You reclaim the authority to define for yourself what is right and what is wrong based on a single unwavering criterion. Does this action strengthen my state, or does it weaken it? Your state is your grand objective. It is your purpose, your legacy, the order you wish to impose upon your small corner of a chaotic world. Under this new law, every virtue and every vice becomes a neutral tool in your arsenal, to be deployed based on strategic necessity, not dogmatic prescription. An act of calculated generosity can be good, not because it is inherently virtuous, but because it indebts a powerful ally and builds a reputation for magnanimity that can be leveraged later. That same act becomes evil if it drains your resources to the benefit of an ungrateful recipient who will see your kindness as weakness. A harsh, decisive action, ending a partnership, removing a disloyal subordinate, delivering a painful truth, may be condemned as cruel by the world. But if it cauterizes a wound that threatened to poison your entire enterprise, if it eliminates a source of future instability, then by the logic of your own law, it was not only necessary, it was good. This new moral compass is for your internal navigation only. In the public square, you must still appear to be a paragon of conventional virtue. As Machiavelli observed, everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Your internal law gives you the freedom to act. Your external appearance gives you the cover to do so without alienating the herd. This is the first and most profound schism, the separation of your true, calculating mind from the virtuous persona you present to the world. It is the birth of the strategist. By forging your own law, you are no longer a leaf blown about by the winds of social pressure. You become the wind itself. You are no longer reacting to a world defined by others. You are imposing your own definition upon it. This is the genesis of sovereignty. It is the moment you take back the keys to your own prison and walk out into the open, not as a creature of circumstance, but as an architect of destiny. But this freedom is not without its weight. It is the burden of total responsibility. There are no more excuses, no one else to blame. Every outcome, success or failure, rests squarely upon the efficacy of your own judgment. This is the price of power, and the first toll paid on the path to invincibility. For as long as you seek permission in the eyes of others, you will remain a servant. True freedom is forged in the silence of your own conviction. Comment: the will commands if you are ready to break your chains and subscribe to learn how to build your inner empire. You have declared your independence from the prison of external opinion. You have shattered the chains of conventional morality and stood for the first time in the stark, liberating light of your own sovereign will. But a declaration is not a kingdom. A rebellion is not a regime. The ground you have claimed is barren and the winds of fortune are already beginning to howl. An empty throne is merely a chair. To rule, you must build. You must lay the foundations of a new state, an internal citadel so formidable that no external force can ever breach its walls. This is the work of alchemy, of transmuting the base metals of human experience, pain, fear, failure, into the imperishable gold of power. This construction is governed by the next three principles, the foundational pillars of your unbreachable mind. The first of these is the most profound act of psychological warfare against fate itself. The second principle: transform poison into medicine. The ordinary mind is brittle. It fractures under the slightest pressure of misfortune. It views adversity as a cosmic injustice, a personal attack by a cruel and arbitrary universe. It weeps, it laments, it asks, "Why me?" This is the question of the victim, and it is a prayer that is never answered. The sovereign mind, the mind of the prince, asks a different question. How can I use this? He understands that fortune is neither good nor evil. It is merely a force, a river of chaos. The weak man drowns in this river. The prince builds a mill upon its banks. He sees every setback not as a wound, but as an opportunity for refinement. Betrayal is not a source of heartbreak. It is a purification. It is the fire that burns away the disloyal, the incompetent, and the secretly envious from your inner circle. It is a painful but invaluable gift of clarity, revealing with perfect precision who cannot be trusted. You should thank the traitor in the silence of your mind for exposing a weakness in your defenses that you can now fortify. Failure is not a mark of shame. It is an autopsy. It is a cold clinical dissection of a flawed strategy. Every mistake, every miscalculation provides priceless data on the tactics of your enemies and the limits of your own current abilities. The idealist is crushed by failure because his ego is tied to the outcome. The prince is detached. The failure was not him, it was the plan. He discards the plan, absorbs the lesson, and formulates a new, more lethal strategy. Even exile, the ultimate form of powerlessness, becomes a weapon. It was in the desolation of his political exile that Machiavelli, stripped of all titles and influence, forged his immortal work, The Prince. Isolation is a crucible. It removes every distraction, every sycophant, every trivial demand on your time and energy. It forces a confrontation with the self and provides the silence necessary for deep strategic thought. The prince does not fear the wilderness. He goes there to sharpen his claws and study the map, while his rivals grow fat and complacent in the city. To practice this alchemy is to achieve a state of profound resilience. You no longer fear the blows of fortune because you have learned to harness their energy. The hammer that was meant to shatter you becomes the very instrument that forges you into steel. With your mind now capable of metabolizing adversity, you must master the forces within. This brings us to the discipline of internal statecraft. The third principle, master the economy of emotion. Your inner world is an economy, and your emotions are its currency. The psychologically vulnerable are emotionally bankrupt. They spend their capital, their anger, their joy, their fear, their love, impulsively on every trivial provocation. Their inner state is a chaotic marketplace of reactions, leaving them perpetually drained and exposed. The prince is the master of his own treasury. He understands that emotions, when displayed, are not a reflection of his inner state, but a calculated expenditure designed to produce a specific return. He cultivates within himself a vast, cold desert of stillness, a core of pure, dispassionate calculation. From this silent center, he can project any emotion the situation demands. Anger is not a loss of control. It is a performance. It is a carefully calibrated display of force to intimidate a rival, to enforce a boundary, or to test the resolve of an underling. It is a storm he unleashes, while he, the eye of the storm, remains perfectly calm. Compassion is not a feeling of pity. It is a strategic investment in loyalty. A public display of mercy, a carefully chosen act of clemency, can bind men to you more tightly than any chain. It creates an image of benevolence that makes future. Necessary cruelties seem like tragic exceptions rather than the rule. Even love, the most volatile and dangerous of all currencies, is managed. The prince understands its power to inspire fanatical devotion in others, but he is a miser with his own. To truly love is to create a vulnerability, to hand another person a knife and point to the one chink in your armor. He may feign affection, he may inspire love, but his own heart is a locked vault. By mastering this economy, you cease to be a slave to your own biology. Your feelings no longer dictate your actions. Instead, your actions dictate which feelings you will publicly display. This creates an impenetrable shield between your true intentions and the perceptions of the outside world. They will react to the mask you wear, the illusion you project, while your true mind operates freely and unseen in the silent fortress of your own disciplined will. Now, with your internal world fortified and its resources under your command, you must give your new strength a direction. A fortress without a purpose is a tomb. A will without an objective dissolves into aimlessness. The mind requires tension to remain sharp. This is the logic behind the final pillar of your foundation. The fourth principle, create a necessary enemy. A long peace is the most dangerous enemy of all. It breeds complacency, dulls the senses, and weakens the spirit. The human mind, like the human body, atrophies without resistance. The prince, therefore, understands that to remain psychologically invincible, he must always be in a state of war. He requires an antagonist, a whetstone against which he can constantly sharpen his blade. If a worthy external enemy does not exist, he creates one. This enemy can be a direct rival, a competitor in business, a political opponent. This figure is a gift. Their successes force you to innovate. Their strategies force you to adapt. Their very existence prevents you from ever believing you have permanently arrived. They are the wolf that keeps the shepherd awake and vigilant. More powerful, however, a necessary enemy can be internal. It can be a past version of yourself you vow to overcome. It can be a weakness you are determined to eradicate, your own hesitation, your own laziness, your own fear. This internal war is the ultimate forge of discipline. Every day becomes a battlefield, every choice a strategic maneuver. There is no room for complacency when you are locked in a perpetual struggle for sovereignty over your own nature. The most masterful application of this principle is to create a grand, abstract enemy. Your purpose is not merely personal ambition. It is a crusade against chaos, a war against ignorance, a stand against the forces of entropy. By framing your struggle in these epic terms, you imbue your will with a profound and unshakable sense of purpose. You are no longer just building a company. You are bringing order to a chaotic market. You are no longer just seeking power. You are a bulwark against incompetence and decay. This necessary enemy gives your mind focus. It justifies the sacrifices you must make. It unites your energies toward a single point. The psychologically fragile seek a life free from conflict. They dream of a frictionless existence, a peaceful valley. The sovereign mind knows this is an illusion. It knows that strength is born only from struggle. It does not pray for peace, it prays for a worthy opponent. Your inner citadel now stands upon three mighty pillars. You have learned the alchemy of turning adversity into fuel, mastered the cold economy of your emotions, and sharpened your will against the whetstone of a necessary enemy. You have achieved sovereignty over your internal domain. But a fortress, no matter how imposing, is still a defensive structure. It can withstand a siege, but it cannot win a war. The next stage of your evolution requires you to move beyond the gates of your own mind and begin projecting your power outward. You must become an architect of realities, not just for yourself, but for those around you. This is the art of governing the minds of others, a far more subtle and potent form of power than brute force could ever be. It is the transition from a sovereign to a prince. This dominion over the psychological landscape of others is built upon principles of perception, influence, and calculated silence. The first maneuver in this campaign is a profound paradox, a strategic retreat that is, in fact, an advance. The fifth principle: let them underestimate you. In a world intoxicated with the display of status and the clamor for recognition, the hunger to be seen as powerful is the most common and fatal of vulnerabilities. Men preen, they boast, they display their strength and intelligence like peacocks displaying their feathers. This reveals everything to a patient observer and nothing to the peacock himself save his own vanity. The prince understands that a visible threat invites a defense. A known enemy is a studied enemy. Therefore, the ultimate weapon is to be perceived as no threat at all. You must master the art of the grey man, cloaking your ambition in a mantle of harmlessness, your intelligence in a veil of simplicity. Cultivate an aura of being slightly overwhelmed, a little too earnest, perhaps even a bit naive. Let them mistake your silence for uncertainty, your courtesy for weakness, your patience for inaction. Encourage this misjudgment. Feed it with carefully selected displays of minor incompetence or feigned humility. While they are busy congratulating themselves on their perceived superiority, you are granted unrestricted access to their inner world. They will speak freely in your presence, assuming you lack the wit to understand the implications of their words. They will reveal their plans, their vanities, their fears, and their weaknesses, all while believing they are merely conversing with a harmless subordinate or an unthreatening peer. Your insignificance becomes your invisibility cloak. This is the path of the fox, who makes no sound as he surveys the henhouse. The lions roar and fight for dominance, drawing all the attention and all the spears. The fox slips in unnoticed and achieves his objective without a single confrontation. To be underestimated is to be given the gift of time and information, the two most precious resources in any conflict. It allows you to map the battlefield, to choose your moment, to prepare your strike with surgical precision, all while your target remains blissfully unaware that the game has even begun. When you finally choose to act, your move will be so swift, so decisive, and from such an unexpected quarter, that it will seem to them like an act of fortune itself, not the culmination of a long and patient strategy. Once you have established your position from the safety of the shadows, you must learn to manipulate the fundamental levers of human motivation. Men are not complex creatures at their core. As Machiavelli knew, they are driven by two primal opposing forces that govern nearly all their actions. The sixth principle: be the source of their hope and their fear. The minds of others are like instruments, and hope and fear are the strings upon which the master strategist plays. To control a person, you must control their perception of the future. You must position yourself as the sole arbiter of their potential joy and their potential ruin. Hope is the promise of gain. You become its source by holding the keys to what they desire: promotion, wealth, recognition, security. But you do not give these gifts freely. They are dispensed in careful, measured doses, always tied to loyalty and performance. You create a clear pathway to reward, making men believe that their advancement is inextricably linked to your own. You become the architect of their ambitions, the sun in whose warmth they believe they can grow. This fosters not just compliance, but eager devotion. Fear, however, is the more reliable and potent tool. It is the promise of loss. The fear of losing what one already possesses is a far more powerful motivator than the hope of gaining something new. You must establish, through decisive and visible action, that you are not only the source of their security, but also the agent of its removal. When disloyalty or incompetence appears, it must be dealt with swiftly and unequivocally. The punishment should be public enough to serve as a lesson to all others. This creates a powerful tension in the minds of those around you. They see in you both the smiling God of their salvation and the grim reaper of their downfall. It is this duality that creates true psychological dominion. They will work tirelessly to win your favor and even harder to avoid your displeasure. They are bound to you not by a single thread of affection, which can be easily cut, but by the thick intertwined cables of their deepest anxieties and aspirations. You become a fundamental condition of their reality, a force to be constantly calculated and appeased. The final element of this psychological statesmanship is the mastery of what is left unsaid. In a world of constant noise, silence becomes the most powerful and unnerving weapon. The seventh principle: weaponize silence and ambiguity. The novice believes power is in speaking, in commanding, in filling every space with his voice and his opinions. The master knows that true power lies in the void you create. When you are silent, others feel an overwhelming urge to fill that silence. In their discomfort, they will rush to reveal their own thoughts, their anxieties, their intentions. They will project onto your blank canvas the fears and hopes that reside within their own minds. Your silence becomes a mirror in which they see their own internal state reflected back at them. Ambiguity works in a similar fashion. Never be fully predictable. If your actions always follow a clear and logical pattern, you become easy to anticipate and counter. You must occasionally act in ways that seem to defy immediate explanation. Make a generous gesture where severity was expected. Show a flash of coldness where warmth was anticipated. These unpredictable movements keep both allies and enemies in a state of perpetual imbalance. They can never be entirely sure of your intentions, and so they are forced to be constantly vigilant, constantly second-guessing themselves. This forces them to expend immense mental energy trying to decipher you, energy they cannot then use to advance their own agendas. Your inscrutability is a form of passive warfare. While they are lost in the fog of trying to understand your motives, you are moving with perfect clarity toward your objective. The prince is not a book to be read. He is a riddle to be pondered, and a riddle without an answer is a form of intellectual torment. By combining the cloak of being underestimated, the dual levers of hope and fear, and the unnerving power of silence, you cease to be merely a player in the game. You become the board itself, defining the terrain upon which all others must move. You have learned to forge your mind into a weapon, to govern the silent currents of perception, and to stand as a fortress against the storms of fortune. You have mastered the mechanics of power. Now, before we reveal how this power is sealed into a legacy that outlasts empires and outlives men, ensure you are subscribed. For the final wisdom, the secret of true immortality is reserved only for those whose will is strong enough to become law. You have reached the final stage. The internal fortress is complete. The external game is understood. Now comes the grande opera, the great work. This is the moment where the prince ceases to be merely a man who holds power and becomes power itself. It is the culmination of all previous principles, the ultimate alchemical act where a mortal will is transmuted into an eternal force. This is the seventh and final principle, the one that separates the temporary rulers from the immortal founders. transcend action and become doctrine. Every action you have taken thus far has been a means to an end. Now your actions themselves must become the end. They must cease to be mere events in time and transform into parables, into foundational myths. Your objective is no longer simply to win the game. It is to become the game itself. This is the apex of psychological invincibility, for how can you be defeated by a system you have created and now embody? This process begins with the deliberate cultivation of a personal mythos. Every public move must be imbued with a significance that transcends its immediate utility. When you eliminate a rival, it is not merely a pragmatic removal of a threat. It must be framed and executed as a necessary surgery to save the body politic from a disease, a tragic but righteous act that reinforces the foundational law of your state, that treason is a cancer that will be met with the searing iron. When you reward a loyal follower, it is not simply a payment for services rendered. It must be a public ceremony, a testament to the virtue of fidelity, a legend in the making that will be told and retold, inspiring a culture of unwavering allegiance. You must become a master of political theater, understanding that people are not governed by logic, but by symbols and stories. Your life must become the central narrative. Your successes are not the result of strategy and luck. They are evidence of a unique and undeniable virtue, a destiny you are fulfilling. Your rare and calculated failures are not mistakes. They are trials, moments of profound testing from which you emerged wiser and stronger for the benefit of all. You begin to consciously build your own legend, brick by symbolic brick, until the man of flesh and blood is slowly eclipsed by the monumental idea he represents. The consolidation of this new mythical state is achieved when your will becomes institutionalized. Your philosophy, your methods, your very way of thinking must become the operating system for your organization, your family, your sphere of influence. You achieve this by creating a doctrine. You establish a set of principles, laws, and traditions that are a direct reflection of your will. You promote disciples, not just competent managers. You seek out those who understand the spirit of your law, not just its letter. These acolytes then become the high priests of your burgeoning religion, spreading your doctrine and enforcing it in your absence. Your power becomes decentralized from your person and encoded into the very culture you have built. People no longer follow your orders simply because they come from you. They follow them because it has become the way things are done. The questions they ask in a crisis shift from, "What should we do?" to the far more powerful, "What would he do in this situation?" When your judgment becomes the instinctive benchmark for others, you have achieved a form of omniscience. You are present in every decision, a ghost in the machine of your own creation. Your power is no longer dependent on your physical presence, your threats, or your promises. It has become atmospheric, a gravitational pull that shapes the actions and thoughts of everyone within its field. They no longer obey you. They obey the reality you have painstakingly constructed around them. And so we arrive at the final philosophical truth of Machiavellian invincibility. It is not, and never was, about building a shield to avoid being wounded. A man who fears being wounded will never enter the battle and therefore can never win. True invincibility is the achievement of a state where any wound you suffer only serves to feed your myth and sanctify your legend. To be struck down by a lesser man and for your disciples to rise up and avenge you in the name of your doctrine is a more potent victory than to have never been touched at all. It is the ultimate proof that your will has become something larger than yourself. It is the transformation of a man into a principle. The psychologically fragile individual seeks a life of peace and comfort. The prince understands that the only true peace is the one you impose upon a chaotic world, and the only true comfort is the cold, hard certainty of your own enduring influence. He does not seek happiness, he seeks efficacy. He does not seek to be loved by all. He seeks to be respected by history. The ultimate power is not to live forever, but to create something that does. It is to carve your will so deeply into the stone of the world that the erosion of centuries cannot erase your mark. It is the defiance of mortality, not by preserving the body, but by making the mind eternal. The throne you built was never for your flesh. It was for your will. And a will, forged into a legend, is the one thing in this universe that can never truly die.